Go on honeymoon or pick up the pieces for FC St. Pauli Chess Club. We know Magnus Carlsen made the right decision today. It's Saturday the 11th of January. He's playing in the Bundesliga with the black pieces here against Max Warmerdam. What an incredible game this is. If you ever wanted to see the difference between the world number one and a 2650 GM, this is it. I mean, playing with white, Max opening with the explosive c4. He's a top 100 player, but watch this. Magnus goes e5. He's already winning after 11 moves, or significantly better, goes on to crush in 33. What incredible chess this is. Both players build the banana hammock, preparing to fianchetto. We get d4 for the score. You could capture, of course, but Magnus, just going off pieced already, plays pawn to d6. And you never ever in a million years go for this. Gary the Goat would be bleating away. Magnus loves to grind like a grandma deep into the end game. So that's why knight f3, good chess, good chess. Knight d7 covers the pawn. We get the second horsey developing, and Magnus now tucks this one into bed. So does Max, he's so impressed. And after knight g to f6, bang, we get castling by both players. Quick king safety fist bump, exploded out. They're over the board in Hamburg, and after queen c2, rook e8, rook d1, all looking natural. With this cannon gazing at the black queen, and it's got very few squares, we now see Magnus advance. We see the knight retreating therefore, and the game spices up because Magnus doesn't do anything about the defense of this pawn. He plays knight b6, counter-attack here, and it's a critical moment. Max goes wrong. Now, first off, what if you simply defend this pawn like this, right? Well, black's got a nice shot, pawn d5, and if you take, well, this is the tricky line. Although this now hangs, everything can go into the blender, and after you sack the exchange, you hop in here, go to Forktown. White simply can't get out the forking way. When the smoke clears, you win back a pawn, and black has a positional advantage. Game goes on, black a bit better. Long line, but this is key to understand. And if upon d5 you don't take, you go c5, well, this structure's just fine for black. Okay, that's one key line about pawn b3. What if you take the pawn straight away? This has got to be explored. Well, then you can take here, and the queen's overloaded in its defense, right? You know, take here, lose a bishop. You can try a kamikaze thing, but it's not good. Black emerges better, so taking the pawn, no good. Finally, after attacking the pawn, bishop g5 was the best move. Idea being, if you take, there's knight d5. You open up pressure here, but also hit the knight, and if it moves, you're crashing through here. Long lines, but we got to explore them because we now see the push of the c-pawn, and it's a big mistake. You can see Stock Barnacle just poop its pants ever so slightly, just poking out really there. And now Magnus has got the great counter shot of this one jumping into d5. Again, looks like you can win a pawn, but no good. You take here. The knight hits b4, queen goes, and now where to put this bishop after d5? You know, go here, now the bishop can take. You blocked. If you go here, well, now this pawn drops. If you go here to stay with the pawn, well, now the bishop streams out. You're just in trouble absolutely everywhere. It's just no good to try and win this pawn. Therefore, we see takes on d6. Magnus recaptures. The bishop streams out with a whoosh. Again, there's pressure on e4, but again, it's not working to take it. A move sooner, by the way, if you hadn't gone bishop g5. Now there could be a threat with the pressure here, and so Magnus plows forth with this e3 move, and it's very uncomfortable. You know, if takes, no good. The knight crashes through. Yes, you can take, but you're giving the bishops. You leave yourself with an ugly structure. If you push, playable, but this is a monster. So what do we see in the game? Knight d3 was best, by the way, but still uncomfortable. Well, f3 played. And yes, you get to set up a bathtub, but it's an upside down bathtub. This bishop is absolutely drowning in the bath there. Magnus now takes on c3. Looks so weird to do that and connects the pawns and strengthen this one. But this is the point. Now you centralize the pony. No more pressure here. And yes, white gets this c4 explosive move, takes the entire center. But this is what Magnus has prepared, the critical pawn h6, because you're actually exchanging prisoners. You know, if the bishop drops back here, then g5 is coming. And if takes, then the queen is taking, everything like that. So we do see an exchange of prisoners. It's the best way to go. This rook hits the c file. Very logical, but Magnus ignores, plays bishop f5, says take the pawn. Who cares? I'm taking this one here. Different game. Magnus still better. He's hitting this pawn. The rooks are coming very quickly to the center. Different one. We're not going to go too deep. Magnus in the driving seat. So instead, we see queen b3 played, tickling the pawn. Magnus now defends. Queen c4, not the best, but this is the difference, right? 2650 versus 28 something a million. They just can't keep up on the nuances of the position. Magnus now brings the rook to the center, pressures the pawn, and Max plays a bit of a stinker, but it's very, very tough here. What was the top move? Queen a4 apparently. Keep bouncing about with the lady, but he plays this f4. Rah, open up the bishop to defend, but Magnus can now take, undouble his pawns, and he's even exposing the monarch here. Not pleasant. We see the queen crash through on c7. Magnus takes here, and now you've no time to actually take, or no, maybe you can take actually. Never explored this line. Okay, but black could actually keep the queens on and threaten this. Fine. Instead, anyway, we see the queens leave the board. Never ideal to be facing the endgame goat deep into an endgame, but what to do? The ladies are off the board. Rook recaptures. This was the line, by the way. Black's got no time to flick in the check, or the queen takes back. So you do have to take first. White takes the pawn. And now a great move by Magnus to keep the advantage. Rook a6, just probing these weaknesses. No rook c2 or you get taken. No rook d2, same reasons. If you do this, terribly passive. This one's coming to the c file. So that's why we see this bishop f3 played. You could have already invaded, but this anticipates the attack here on the e pawn coming soon. But first, Magnus plays the prudent bishop f8. Just covers the advance of the d pawn, stops the counterplay. White should now invade to c7 here, but doesn't do so. We see a move of g4, and it's almost as awkward as Fabiano Caruana's Saturday night disco outfit. Bit uncomfortable to look at. Now Magnus slides to e4. You could have come back to d7, keep the bishop pair as they say, but it gets a bit passive. The rook was coming to c7, so this much more logical. Now the rook does invade, kebabs those pawns, but Magnus ignores, takes on a2, hitting the pawn on e2, and it's why we don't yet see this one eaten.
Mushrooms.
Instead, king f1. Idea being, now if black ever takes, you can recapture with the knight, pawn is covered, and you're getting some nice counterplay. So of course we come back from the back cave. Magnus didn't do that. He played the move of rook to d2, incisive. You cannot take, or the pawn's marching through here. So rook a1 played instead, targeting those weak pawns, but now Magnus chops on d4, rook takes on a7, and he puts the second d pawn into the blender. The double d's have disappeared, the bishop captures, the rook takes back, and there's big problems. You know, what if you take on b7? Looks so natural because then you're crashing through here. Well, the problem is rook d1, and you're in this eternal pin due to the suffocating nature of this pawn. And sure, you can crash through, but with the bishop doing this amazing defensive job, now the second rook can join the party. Try and stop it, well then you take, and the bishop turns from defense into attack. That knight's not long for this world. Completely one position for black. Therefore, the king steps from the pin. Knight f3 was also no good. Rook e4 was coming, taken here. There's even mating ideas in those lines. Unbelievable. So king g2 is played here. Now Magnus goes rook d2, preparing to win a pawn. Rook c2, technically the best defense, but of course not pleasant. You lose all your counterplay. So king f3 was played, desperate to glue everything together. A big king pawn seesaw here, but Magnus now finishes the game on the spot, move 33 with rook to d1. He's about to win a knight. You can't step back and support, of course, and anywhere you move the knight, you're just losing the game. You know, you come here and then you check, king goes, you check, and then you drive it all the way back and win the pawn. Why does the king come to g2 in this line? Well, if the knight had come this way, then you check, you drive the knight to g3. That's an even worse square because you run into this one. Absolutely no good. You're winning an entire rook there. So whether you go here, no good. Knight d3, bang, you crash through like this, sack the exchange, push the pawn. White has to give a rook just to stave that one off, and again you emerge a bishop ahead, completely won endgame. This the final position. Crunching game by Magnus Carlsen there. Hope you enjoyed. Smash subscribe if you did, and check out the video on screen for another incredible game of chess. Hope to see you again soon, and cheers.